Hey, it's Friday. We finally made it to Friday. That's a good martini all by itself. And we actually do have a regular good martini today. One of the things we should point out here at the top, though, is that I hear a lot that parents feel very comfortable listening to this podcast with their children, which I love. Well, we want kids to be well informed and understand what's going on. And we feel very grateful that you can trust us to address these things in a way that you feel comfortable having your kids with us. You don't want your kids with you in the second martini today, most likely. First martini, great. Second martini, hit pause, have them go take the trash out or something, and then bring them back for the third martini. Just some fair warning on that content. But Jim, we have finally made it to the weekend, and it turns out, and we'll talk about it in our first martini here in a second, that maybe tariffs don't reduce prices for people.
Yeah. By the way, Greg, are you hearing from a lot of parents who are saying, I really like your version of Mickey Mouse Clubhouse better? Some 24 fan dads who are like, I've listened to this song a million times. Hey, let's listen to this show. Kids, they're talking about Mickey Mouse and Goofy. So.
Yes. Well, hey, that's just real life. Well, we'll be more than happy to let the kids learn about Disney CTU. So, and they're going to learn about tariffs. They're going to learn about John Fetterman and the threats that he deals with, primarily from the left, as it turns out, as time goes on. In the middle, we'll be talking about Jeffrey Epstein and specifically what Megyn Kelly had to say about that yesterday. But in the meantime, if you're looking to create a stable financial future, look into Noble Gold Investments. Gold IRAs let you hold real assets in a tax-deferred or tax-free retirement account. And Noble Gold is the #1 ranked gold IRA company 4 years in a row with more than $2.5 billion in precious metal transactions. And, here's what I like about Noble Gold. I just like the people there, first of all. I've had the chance to sit down and talk to these folks. They're not, some sort of hucksters. They're very calm. They're very knowledgeable, and they're very interested in sharing their knowledge with you, because the things that they have learned over time could certainly be a financial benefit to you as well. So if you're looking for more ways to make sure you have a secure retirement, check out Noble Gold.
Noble Gold lives up to that name. Their pricing is clear and upfront with no hidden fees or tricky fine print. Whether it's a gold IRA or just a direct purchase, they make the process easy. And if you ever want to sell, they will buy your metals back quickly and fairly. You'll even get a photo of your actual metals, so there's no guesswork. And most of their business comes from repeat clients and referrals, meaning they have lots of satisfied customers.
Yeah, Noble Gold knows the markets, the metals, the strategies, and they explain them patiently in a way that's easy to understand. No hype, no gimmicks, just honest, fact-based insights and clear options. And their track record speaks for itself. So take advantage of this limited time offer. Open a new qualified IRA or cash account with Noble Gold and get a free 10-ounce silver flag bar plus a silver American Eagle proof coin. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com/3ML. That's noblegoldinvestments.com/3ML. All right, Jim, on to our good martini now. And of course, it was late March, early April when the president announced all sorts of reciprocal tariffs. And then since then, there's been some renegotiated trade deals, some fluctuation in the tariffs we've applied, and more negotiations ongoing. But the question is, ultimately, is when we place higher tariffs on countries and the things that they send us, ultimately, are we paying more? Is it essentially a tax on us? That's largely been our argument here. And now there's more ammo for that, courtesy of the Trump administration, actually. But they're doing the right thing here. The Wall Street Journal reporting the U.S. plans to eliminate tariffs on bananas, coffee, beef, and certain apparel and textile products under framework agreements with 4 Latin American nations. The expected move, which would apply to some goods from Ecuador, Argentina, El Salvador, and Guatemala, is part of a shift from the Trump administration to water down some of its so-called reciprocal tariffs in the midst of rising prices for consumers, as well as legal uncertainty after a Supreme Court hearing this month. And that case was about the president, whether he has unilateral power to deal with tariffs and that sort of thing. We don't have a ruling from the court on that yet. But Jim, one of the things that seems to be getting through after the elections is you need to be focused a lot on pocketbook issues, just like you were a year ago. People are still not satisfied just because there's been a change of administrations, and this seems to be one area that people are frustrated with. Hopefully they're listening.
Yeah, so we should point out that the oral arguments for that case did not appear to go great for the Trump administration. You can read too much into the justices' questioning, but they certainly seem to be skeptical that the president had this far-reaching unilateral power to adjust the tariffs really almost on a day-to-day basis on any country for seemingly any reason, as long as he calls it an emergency. There are two ways to look at this. I think, if you thought the tariffs were a bad idea, if you believe, like I do, that targeted tariffs on a place like China makes sense, it makes sense for the United States to economically uncouple, or consciously uncoupling, as Gwyneth Paltrow would call it, then it makes absolute sense to say, yes, we want to reduce, we do want to make products from China more expensive, we want to develop more domestic production of that, or we want to import them from friendlier countries, not one that is our preeminent geopolitical rival. That all makes perfect sense. Other countries, whether it's Thailand or Venezuela, or really basically every other country in the world, that does not make sense, and that was a factor in increasing prices. Sometimes companies are going to, quote-unquote, eat the cost, as Trump has urged them to. But in a whole bunch of cases, they're going to say they don't want to, or that they can't. And keep in mind, it's not just imported goods. It is also any product we make here that involves imported components or parts or things like that. So this is why, a factor in the increasing cost of living. Not the only factor, but it is a significant one. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said this week the administration was working to reduce prices on these agricultural goods and other items. Quote, you're going to see some substantial announcements over the next couple of days in terms of things we don't grow here in the United States, coffee being one of them, bananas, other fruits, things like that. That will bring the prices down very quickly. So tariffs do increase prices. This is what the administration has been insisting was not the case for the most part of this year. Again, I'm glad to see it. If you're going to do it for these 3 or 4 products, how about all these other products you've had? And again, I'm willing to make an exception for China. I'm willing to make it, one of the 25% tariffs we put on goods from India was over their purchase of Russian oil, which is keeping the Russian war machine going. I clearly support that objective. I have my doubts about whether you can really use tariffs as the most effective one, but Indian oil refineries are declining their purchases of Russian oil because all of a sudden they don't want to deal with the consequences. So I get where the administration is coming from on some of them. Other ones, like that island full of penguins that didn't have a lot of people, I don't really understand the justification for that one. But here's the thing. This is a really, really significant concession by the part of the administration to say, okay, tariffs do increase prices. Americans are very upset about prices. We have something we can do about it. And for those of us who drink an enormous amount of coffee, yes, great to see that price going down. I think the problem now is they have faced hey, how about all these other prices that are expensive? Why are you guys keeping the tariffs in that case? And in some of these cases, there's less of a national security argument and more of a, well, we just really like tariffs and we think this is a great way to bring in revenue.
Yeah. We're big fans of the free market, and we think that's the best way to go, and let American products compete. We think our workers are the best. We think our products are the best, and let's onshore a few more things, too, that we unfortunately have offshore to China and so forth. Just as a probably irrelevant aside, if there's an island nation that's populated only by penguins, who's running the country?
The king penguin. He's moved from Gotham City. Penguin. And he's actually had recently issued a statement about the idea of tariffs being dropped on this island. Was the quote there. So nice. Some Burgess Meredith action for all of our young listeners.
Had to be Burgess Meredith or Mario Lemieux.
There we go. Okay, that joke would have worked as well too.
That's right. So anyway, well, let's hope that we'll see more of this. I think that's a smarter way to go to help bring things down, at least in part. Well, good news for some businesses here in the United States as a result of that news. But when it comes to your business, they say you can have things better, cheaper, or faster, but you only get to get 2 out of 3. So what if you could have all 3 at the same time, better, cheaper, and faster? Well, that's exactly what businesses like Cohere, Thomson Reuters, and Specialized Bikes have done since they've upgraded to the next generation of the cloud. It's called Oracle Cloud Infrastructure.
How is it faster? Well, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure's block storage gives you more operations per second. How is it cheaper? OCI costs up to 50% less for computing, 70% less for storage, and up to 80% less for networking. And how is it better? Well, in test after test, OCI customers report lower latency and higher bandwidth versus other clouds. This is the cloud that is built for AI and all of your biggest workloads.
And right now, with zero commitment, try OCI for free. Head to oracle.com/martini. That's oracle.com/martini to try OCI for free. Oracle.com/martini. All right, we've arrived at that second martini. So parents, if you want to hit pause, you can. I'll leave it to your discretion, though. If you think your kids are old enough to handle it, by all means, let them listen. But over the last few days, really ever since it became apparent that the government was going to reopen, the Democrats have suddenly had a brand new fixation on Jeffrey Epstein. Part of it's due to the fact that the new representative from Arizona has been sworn in, Adelita Grijalva, and she's the 218th signature on this discharge petition to force a vote on releasing all of the Justice Department's Epstein files. So there is a reason that this is coming to light. The Democrats have also released selective emails from Jeffrey Epstein over time. I'm not exactly sure what year they're from and so forth, that would seem to suggest in the eyes of some that Donald Trump knew more about Epstein's operations than Trump has suggested. Others have been redacted, and then it turns out it's a girl that has said repeatedly under oath that she never saw Trump do anything, never experienced Trump do anything in that sort of way. And so the Republican argument is that the Democrats are trying to make an argument as far as Trump's involvement in Epstein's operations that may certainly not be based on evidence. But as Jim has written, the Trump administration has not handled this issue well, from Pam Bondi several months ago right up to the present. There's reports that they tried to get a couple of members of Congress to remove their names from this discharge petition so it wouldn't come to a floor vote. That has not succeeded. Yesterday on her podcast, Megyn Kelly addressed this issue. Megyn Kelly, of course, from Fox News, had a famous run-in with Donald Trump on the debate stage in 2016. After that cycle, she left for NBC, had a very successful interview, or at least in terms of ratings, with Vladimir Putin. And then after that, she kind of fizzled out at NBC. But she's been very successful as a podcast host. And yesterday, she decided to share what someone who knows a lot about this investigation has told her about Jeffrey Epstein. And this is really disturbing.
As for Epstein, I've said this before, but just as a reminder, I do know somebody very, very close to this case who is in a position to know virtually everything. Not everything, but virtually everything. And this person has told me from the start, years and years ago, that Jeffrey Epstein, in this person's view, was not a pedophile. This is this person's view, who was there for a lot of this, but that he was into the barely legal type. Like he liked 15-year-old girls. And I realize this is disgusting. I'm definitely not trying to make an excuse for this. I'm just giving you facts. That he wasn't into like 8-year-olds, but he liked the very young teen types that could pass for even younger than they were, but would look legal to a passerby. And that is what I believed, and that was what I reliably was told for many years. And it wasn't until we heard from Pam Bondi that they had tens of thousands of videos of alleged, forgive me, they used to call it kiddie porn, now they call it child sexual abuse material, on his computer, that for the first time I thought, oh, no, he was an actual pedophile. I mean, only a pedophile gets off on young children abuse videos. She's never clarified it. I don't know whether it's true. I have to be honest. I don't really trust Pam Bondi's word on the Epstein matters anymore. Yeah, so I don't know what's true about him, but we have yet to see anybody come forward and say, I was I was under 10. I was under 14 when I first came within his purview. Look, you can say that's a distinction without a difference.
No, it's not.
I think there is a difference. Yeah. There's a difference between a 15-year-old and a 5-year-old. You know, it's just whatever. It's sick. Every time we start talking about Epstein, it makes your skin crawl. You right? The whole thing is just disgusting.
Totally.
There's nothing about a 15-year-old that's barely legal, Megyn. And yeah, there's a difference, I guess, in their stages of developments. But in terms of the depravity and the heinousness and the evil of the crime, as the dad of 2 daughters, whether they're 8 or whether they're 15, you're still going headfirst through the wood chipper. Jim, I can't believe that anybody's trying to dissemble this. Who in the world has any incentive to defend Jeffrey Epstein? If you want to try and defend based on what we know so far about Trump, that's I guess something you could spend time doing. But in terms of, got to look at it this way. Well, at least he wasn't this. What are you doing?
Listeners, I know that 99.9% of the time on this podcast, Greg Corombos comes across as the nicest guy in the world. And very often he is, until he feels children are being threatened. And then those are the ones you really don't want to mess with. And as we just heard, Greg Corombos will put you headfirst into a wood chipper if you do something like that. So, but the good news is the Corombos yard is really well fertilized. So they got that. All right. So I hate to
Our
live
neighborhood has better neighbors than that. Trust me.
I'm just saying the roses are blooming really well, Greg. So I hate to live down to my cliche, but there is a lot to unpack here. On the campaign trail, Trump was asked twice, would you release the Epstein files? Now, by the way, there's not one clear Epstein file thing. Like there's the court documents that have been kept under seal by a judge. The Trump administration has tried to get them unveiled. The judge has said, no, there's too much information in there that does not need to be disclosed to the public. I'm not going to, they can try to appeal this, but that's a factor. What we're talking about in this case is the Department of Justice's files on everything regarding Epstein and also Maxwell, who you'll recall is in prison and who some people say wants a pardon. She was interviewed by the DOJ's Assistant Attorney General. Now, by the way, on the campaign trail, J.D. Vance said we should release everything. Numerous times before he was FBI director, Kash Patel ripped into congressional Republicans for not releasing everything. And he really kind of condescendingly said, it's time to put on your big boy pants and get this done. Well, if only Kash Patel were in some position where wait a minute, he's now the director of the FBI. And we had this, as you mentioned, this press conference from Attorney General Pam Bondi and all these other folks. And all of a sudden, oh no, we can't release this stuff. There's too much stuff in there that, one argument is there's names of the victims. I think you get a black marker, you cross them out. That's what did happen with some of these documents that were in Epstein's personal files seized by authorities, and that you can take that move. I think that what a lot of people think is that there's a lot of people who are very embarrassed by their association with Epstein, whether it involved abuse of underage girls or not. And this idea of they just don't want their names out there and associated with it. Well, I'm sorry, but that's there's extraordinary public interest in this. And if you're an elite and you associated a lot with Jeffrey Epstein, maybe you got to take the reputational hit of having that friendship, since it sounds like his abuse of women was an open secret in so many ways. But anyway, that's setting the stage. The House has had this vote. There's now a discharge petition. Mike Johnson said they're going to have this vote at some point next week. Again, I think it's going to put a lot of Republicans in really awkward spot because Trump has been adamant he doesn't want this stuff released. He refers to it as the Epstein hoax. He says that, he said Epstein is someone who nobody cares about anymore. I'm sorry, Mr. President, that's not even close to being true. I think it's entirely reasonable to say, take whatever precautions are needed, but these documents, better to have them out there than to not have them out there. There's been this perception that there's been a lack of curiosity about how far Epstein's connections were and about how far Epstein's actions went. So then getting on to Megyn Kelly. I've been on her podcast a bunch of times. I have no animosity towards her. I've enjoyed being on it. It's been a while. They're happy to be on again, but I don't quite understand what her thinking is on this issue. A couple other issues too, but I'm going to focus on this right now. As you mentioned, barely legal is not 15-year-olds, right? Barely legal would be on the 18th birthday, right? That means that you're legal, but you just barely became legal. 15 is not that. The rest of the teen years, this is not, you're on the wrong side of legal of that point. And also her phrase, but they look younger, that really is not as exculpatory as she makes it sound, right? Look at the driver's license. This person is 15, but they look younger. That doesn't make anyone less. I understand that if you're a clinical psychologist, maybe you draw a distinction between a grown man who's attracted to girls who are in their older teen years but under 18 versus children. I think the general public does not draw that distinction and does not care about this distinction. It's really kind of shocking to see two figures, well known and if not on the right, then currently by being pro-Trump perceived to be right, emphasizing that there is a difference. Is there? Is there one that anybody really cares about? No, I don't think so. I really don't think. And the other thing is that you see this in Trump's comments. You see this in basically everyone who knew him and in that creepy book of birthday greetings and all that stuff. It certainly sounds like everybody knew that Jeffrey Epstein was always surrounded by teenage girls Trump reportedly said to Roger Stone when he went over to Epstein's house, he thought that like the neighborhood kids, he was allowing them to use the pool, right? So everybody knew that they looked astonishingly young. Whether, of their age, it is now very clear based on their testimony, they were in those teen years. They were under 18. That is a crime, right? 17th birthday, 364 days, technically that's a crime. Prosecutors have discretion over that sort of thing. 14, 15, 16, we're not in a gray area. We're not in something where it's close. And particularly if you're a grown man or something like that. So I have no idea where she's coming from on this. And maybe this is just her being pedantic and saying, well, technically there's a definition of pedophilia, and this doesn't really meet that clinical American Psychological Association, whatever it is. One, no one cares. Two, when you come out and make this distinction at this moment, when there's all this discussion about the release of these files, it certainly makes people think you're trying to create some sort of defense. And to say, oh, Epstein wasn't that bad. Well, yes, he was that bad. There is no gray area here. There is no, yes, but no. This is really bad. I don't understand why this is going on. And I'm just going to point out, between Trump throwing tirades about this on Truth Social, on people like Bondi and Kash Patel and all these people doing this about face, and now you throw in somebody like Megyn Kelly saying, well, it's not really pedophilia. This all feels like there's something terrible out there that they all want to make sure it doesn't get exposed. I don't know what it is. I'm not going to pretend to know what it is. I'm just going to say everybody's acting like somebody is guilty as sin here and doesn't want it to come to light.
Yeah, I mean, we had said so many times that we figured if there had been any Trump implication here, it would have come out during the Biden years, maybe even the Obama years. Others are saying, well, no, Ghislaine Maxwell was being prosecuted or appealing during a lot of the Biden years, so that's why nothing was released then. I don't know. There doesn't seem to be a smoking gun yet as it relates to President Trump, but you're right that it seems like if it's not about him in particular, maybe he's trying to protect other people. I don't know what this is, but the narrative changed so much so quickly on this. Yeah. Where Bondi just tried to put it away some weekend earlier this year, where she's like, oh, as it turns out, there is no list. They really weren't trafficking people, and so there's really nothing to see here. It's all going to go away. Bye. And nobody's going for that because, I mean, even if you don't necessarily believe everything Virginia Giuffre said before she died, hello, we've got the prince formerly known as Andrew, or the former prince known as Andrew, who got stripped by his mother of all his titles and duties and stuff, and then Prince Charles kicked him out of his house, and then he's not even allowed to be called prince anymore. I don't think any of that would have happened if there wasn't something there. And not just him, I'm pretty sure. The
argument of, if Trump had committed some terrible crime, wouldn't it have come to light with 4 years of Merrick Garland running? Okay, that's a perfectly reasonable point. But if that's the case and Trump didn't do anything to it, why is this? Why are we not allowed to see this stuff? Why is this suddenly under lock and key by people who insisted they were going to release everything, and who Dan Bongino brought this up on his podcast a lot of times. He's now deputy director of the FBI. All these people were perfectly willing to bang the drum on this, and then they got into positions of power, and all of a sudden now they don't want to have any of these documents released. That stinks to high heaven, and I cannot begrudge anybody for being suspicious. The administration knows exactly what it's got to do here to make this issue, to get to resolve this issue. For some reason, they just refuse to do it.
Yeah, and the left has done a 180 on this too, when Bill Clinton was mainly the person involved, and maybe some other figures on the Democratic side. Let's talk about something else and move along if we can here. And so you've got, now they're licking their chops and hoping that there's something absolutely incontrovertible about Donald Trump. And one of the weirdest things here, one of the people trying to lead the charge on this is the Lincoln Project, which might have the least credibility on stopping sexual predators towards underage people. If you remember that whole scandal from a couple of years ago. So intellectual integrity and consistency not exactly in high supply here when this story encompasses both parties, potentially. Well, after a story like that, you definitely want to take a shower. You definitely want to refresh, and there's no better way to do that than with good skincare products. And with that, you want OneSkin. And don't look at your calendar now, but we're only about a month and a half away from Christmas, and OneSkin has launched its limited edition holiday sets, including the Nightly Rewind gift set. That includes their best-selling face moisturizer, their new peptide lip mask, and a cooling gua sha tool. Each component of the set is designed to work together as your body enters its natural nightly repair mode. And at the core of everything OneSkin does is the patented OS1 peptide, the first ingredient proven to target senescent cells, the root cause of wrinkles, crepiness, and loss of elasticity, which are all key signs of skin aging. And these results have now been validated in 5 different clinical studies.
Listeners, do you have sensitive skin? Does it react strongly to chemicals? Or does it just simply get very prickly when it gets criticized? Whatever your skin's level of sensitivity, OneSkin products are certified safe for sensitive skin, free from more than 1,500 harsh or irritating ingredients. They are dermatologist tested, and they've been awarded the National Eczema Association Seal of Acceptance, or as we call them over here, the good NEA, and they deliver powerful results without all the side effects. All of OneSkin's products are designed to layer seamlessly and replace multiple steps in your routine, making your skin health easier and smarter at every age.
For a limited time, try OneSkin for 15% off using the code 3ML at oneskin.co/3ML. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them, so please support the 3 Martini Lunch and tell them that we sent you. That's code 3ML at oneskin.co/3ML for 15% off. All right, Jim, last topic here relates to Pennsylvania Democratic Senator John Fetterman. First of all, our best wishes go out to Senator Fetterman. He fell yesterday. Seems like a heart issue while he was out for a walk. Banged up his face a little bit, says he's going to be fine, but still in the hospital for observation. Obviously, his heart and other issues going back to the stroke and perhaps even before that, for all we know, have been concerns there. And so they're taking their time to figure out exactly what's going on there. But John Fetterman also has a book out called Unfettered. And of course, ever since the terrorist attack in Israel in 2023, Fetterman's been an outspoken supporter of Israel, which means ever since then, he's been a pariah in many sectors of the left, especially the far left base. And so part of what he talked about in this book is how ridiculously evil some of the comments have been from folks on the left. And Dana Bash over at CNN is mystified as to why he would say the left comments are worse than the right. Well, John Fetterman explained it very clearly.
You said, quote, "I've drunk deeply of the venom of both the left and the right. As a connoisseur, I can confirm that the most poisonous, the bitterest, is from the far left." That is pretty remarkable to hear you say that as an elected Democrat. Why?
No. It's just been my personal experience on this thing. And when I asked my digital team, I said, we're on all the platforms. Really, what's kind of the harshest? What's kind of the most personal? And the answer was immediate. He said, "Oh, blue sky. It's blue sky." And the difference is, the right would say really rough things and names. Some names I won't repeat on TV, but the on the left, it was like they want me to die, or that we're cheering for your next stroke, or that's terrible that depression won. Why couldn't it depression won? And I hope your kids find you. They even have like the graphic, a GIF where they have like a stroke, in your head,
oh my gosh.
Cheering at that. Yeah, and they said that. I remember one, they claimed, the doctor let us down, and why did they have to save his life? Just really, I just can't imagine. People are wishing, I wish he dies, or I want him to die, literally cheering for a stroke. And I don't know what the kind of a place where that comes from. That's much different than just calling me a name. That's really been consistent, in that community online.
Jim, we've talked about this, or certainly heard a lot about this ever since the murder of Charlie Kirk a couple of months ago, where the right can get vitriolic and the language can get pretty tough. And then the left, of course, out there is cheering assassinations, at least a disturbingly high percentage, obviously not everyone on the left. And that kind of rhetoric continues. And so the line on the right has been, we are not the same. And what Fetterman is describing there suggests very clearly the two sides are not the same.
Yeah. So first of all, the First Amendment protects your right to criticize any candidate or lawmaker. They are public figures. They have a much higher bar to prove libel or slander. But whether or not you have the right to something doesn't necessarily mean you should do something. And I think a lot of us would say hoping that his kids find him dead really goes well beyond any line of legitimate criticism. Now, look, we should, we have clear eyes of John Fetterman. He is a Pennsylvania Democrat, which means every once in a while he's going to vote the way we'd like to see him to vote. But he's going to vote against the way we want a whole bunch of times. But, he has stood up to the rest of his party on some very emotionally charged issues. Obviously, Israel in front and center. But let's remember, this was the only guy who was really willing to, lots of Senate Democrats offered a murmured criticism of Bob Menendez for what turned out to be, multi-counts of bribery and just, and Fetterman brought it up every opportunity. Fetterman really seemed to enjoy sticking it to him and twisting the knife to him. And I just feel like that was that's an act of integrity. That is confronting a problem in your own party that most people would rather avert their eyes from. Let's point out on the issue of illegal immigration, he pointed out that wanting a secure border is not xenophobia. You might say, Jim, that's like saying 2 + 2 = 4. But a lot of Democrats won't say that. That is a rare and seemingly brave statement for Fetterman to come out and say that. And just today, in Michael Continetti's column in the second best op-ed page of a newspaper, the Wall Street Journal, he makes the point that Fetterman was saying that, Chuck Schumer engineered the longest shutdown ever for nothing, making life miserable for air travelers, food stamp recipients, and federal employees. And I think Fetterman's right on that. Fetterman from the beginning was, I don't want to continue the shutdown. And we can argue about, the Obamacare subsidies and all this other stuff, but he did not see the point of it. So in my mind, he's got much higher supplies of common sense than the typical Senate Democrat. The other thing I've thought about is that if you go back and listen to the archives of this podcast, in 2022, we were not fans of John Fetterman, particularly after the stroke. And we were pulling for that whirling dervish of raw political charisma and staunch supporter of Israel who hasn't said a darn thing about Israel since October 7th, Mehmet Oz. But Oz is now running the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services. And Fetterman, you can go back and find lots of cases where you and I are arguing John Fetterman should not be the nominee and that he was not well. Go back and listen to that last debate with Oz, and it was very clear. Fetterman could really barely speak. He could not put together his words and his thoughts in a complete sentence. He was still really struggling. Fetterman's book is out, as you mentioned, and in the book he writes, in hindsight, I should have quit. And he says that not as a matter of a reflection of his depression, but as a sense of that his condition was just in really rough shape and he was really not capable of doing the job the way he really needed to be done. Now, we just played that audio. He sounds much better. He's sounding worlds better than he was back in 2022. And I'm thrilled to hear it. I hope John Fetterman lives to be 100. I hope he gets through this recent hospitalization fine. He's going to be around for another couple of years. And I think that as far as Democrats go, he's probably one of the much better ones. And I hope he and his family get to enjoy each other for, decades and decades to come. Should he continue? I'd like to. I feel the letter from his doctor that he released at the time appeared to be utter nonsense because they were saying he could do the job with no significant restrictions. Then he got up on stage and really couldn't talk. I'm really glad he's made it looks like if not a full recovery, a really significant recovery. He looks and sounds better. He's doing the job the way it's meant to be done. I don't think we were wrong to say that this man should not be a Senate candidate back then just because he was in no shape to campaign. He was in no shape to do the right. So I don't say that was bad, or I don't regret anything. I'm just really thrilled that he's made it much better. And Mehmet Oz, he said he was a big supporter of Israel on the campaign trail then, and he's just not. Just maybe he's just waiting for the right time to issue a statement about the October 7th attacks.
Yeah, being very patient about it. Yeah, that comment that Dana Bash and all of us recoil on, we hope your kids find you dead. At one point, I was expecting him to say, Jay Jones really needs to tone it down. But that's a joke. He didn't actually say that as far as we know. But he did say it about, of course, the former Speaker of the House of Virginia. But apparently he's not the only one who talks like that and wishes those sorts of things because their lives are completely engrossed in politics and a certain perspective, and any threat to what they want to see happen must be met with just the most vile response. So amazing.
Listeners, don't let politics drive you crazy. Think of calm thoughts like Greg feeding some creep into a wood chipper. That's what I think of when I need to feel happy.
Thankfully, I haven't had to do that, but now the warning's out there. So
you say. There's some disappearances of suspicious characters. So. What a lovely thought to end the week on.
The warning's out there. Jim, have a good weekend. See you Monday.
See you Monday, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. Tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corombos. Don't forget that also Instagram and Facebook, I believe, are now up as well. Have a great weekend. Join us on Monday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.